Hey guys, Chris here from Carolot Farm. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. We have just come through our second heat wave here in Virginia. It is now the 2nd of August, I believe. I just came down to feed the minis breakfast. It's day 1 or 2 post second heat wave, and Sweetheart once again is frothy at the nose and the mouth. Even though we just finished up her round of decks yesterday, it looks like we'll be starting another round. So I most definitely need to get up with our vet because, you know, we've got to do something else for this poor little girl. This morning, I've gone ahead and fed her though. And I've done that because the last time she had an episode like this and the vet was out, you know, originally the vet thought it was choke, and once she got here and did her evaluation, it wasn't, it was just a flare up. So the vet said it was fine to go ahead and feed her, which is what I've done. You know, she certainly is hungry, she's bright, she wants her food. It's a very small amount of food, so I'm not so worried about her choking on it. But again, you know, she shouldn't be frothing at the nose and the mouth. That just kind of tells us that there's more inflammation and there's more fluid buildup, and all of that extra heaving and breathing that she's been doing has just irritated her airway even more so. Which is why I'm going to start her on a 3rd round of decks. And, you know, if you've seen some of our other videos, it's not a medicine I'm very comfortable giving just because I do worry about founder with these little guys, especially Sweetheart being a little on the heavier side now. So it's kind of the tool I have to work with right now, but I definitely need to figure out something else because this can't be a long-term solution for our little mini here. You know, as she's eating, you can hear all of that extra fluid and such kind of inside her mouth. Oh, sweet girl. So this is kind of that frothing I'm telling you with the nose and the mouth. I know when horses eat a lot of clover, she just wants to get up close and personal. When they eat a lot of clover, yes, they can be known to drool a lot. But it doesn't usually come out the nose. And because she just finished eating, it's not quite as drippy or bubbly, but it was like she was blowing bubbles out of her nostrils and dripping it out of her mouth, which is, I feel, indicative of another flare-up. So, yeah, poor thing. Now, you may have noticed that I have a syringe in my hand. Well, this is the medicine for Sweetheart here. Now that she's finished eating, I'm going to give her medicine and then turn her out. You know, I'm concerned about that kind of frothiness I see in her nose and her mouth. It's just extra fluid. However, having gone through this just a few weeks ago with her, I'm feeling a little more confident in what it is and how to treat it. Long term though, you know, we still have to figure a better solution. So she feels good, she's bright, she ate well. I'm going to give her Dex, and that seems to give her pretty good relief these days. But all in all, she's feeling her usual self. She wants to go out and graze with the others, and so that's what we're going to let her do. After just finishing up her 2nd round of medicine yesterday, and yesterday being the first day post 2nd heat wave, I really felt pretty confident that Sweetheart was, you know, through this 2nd, you know, hot stretch, and that she would be faring much better. You know, the temperatures are much cooler today. The humidity is down. There's a nice breeze blowing. So I am a little surprised to once again come down on such a nice morning and find her in this condition. It's kind of though how it happened last time. You know, it was like the first really nice day post heat wave when she had that earlier, you know, flare up and such when we had the vet out. So it's a little perplexing, but it just seems to be this cyclical thing that she is experiencing. So again, I really was hesitant to do so, but I have started her on a 3rd round of medicine, kind of back to back on the 2nd round. I know some horses are on this type of medicine for quite some time, and the vet did say that if she ever were to have like a relapse, or if she were to have like a flare up in the middle of a dosage, because of the way in which you structure and kind of taper them off of it, the vet said it was fine to go back to like the initial higher dose. So I'm not doing anything that our vet hasn't recommended or even said might potentially be necessary. But again, I really don't want to be continuing to use this medicine long term. And so, you know, we probably need to schedule a follow-up and really just put our heads together and figure another plan. It's now Sunday morning, and I came down to feed the horses, and I noticed that Sweetheart still had some of that like foamy frothiness coming out of her mouth. She had those bubbles, you know, little beard of bubbles. So that has me a little concerned because the medicine that I gave her yesterday, it did help kind of clear things up initially. She looked really good throughout the day. Her breathing was sounding better, like there was less of that, you know, fluidy stuff, you know, in her airway. And she was no longer, you know, drooling and kind of making those bubbles. And I know it sounds a lot like clover, and it could just be a fluke, right? But none of my other horses are showing any signs of having ingested a ton of clover. I have very, very little clover in my paddocks. And so I do think it is more tied to her chronic breathing condition and just sort of like some irritation and inflammation and additional fluid that's building up because of that. So again, I gave her that first round of medicine yesterday, and so today when I came to check on her, I was really surprised that she was still showing signs of that. It is better than yesterday, but I can still hear a little bit of that extra like fluidy stuff in her throat. And so I've given her her second dose of medicine once again, and I just want to come back and keep checking on her throughout the day to make sure that she's not worsening her condition. You know, normally in the past when I've given her the medicine, especially on like day one, at the higher level, her symptoms seem to just go away and she seems to feel much, much better. So I'm not really sure why that hasn't been our experience this time. She seems bright, alert, she has a great appetite, she wants to go graze with her friends. So I'm not super concerned. Now, if she was standing off to herself, lethargic, hanging her head low, I'd be more concerned. But I definitely have these continuing concerns and now additional questions about the effectiveness of the medicine given her continued symptoms. So I definitely need to speak to somebody in person and figure out a plan. You can see there's a lot of this extra slobbery stuff coming out of the side of her mouth. Her nostrils are a little funky. I don't know if you can hear it, but you can just hear all the extra like sloshing around. Yeah, this whole journey here with Sweetheart, I feel like every day I've got more questions, and we've learned a lot along the way, but we have so much more to still figure out. So I'll keep you posted as we continue to kind of hopefully make strides and help her to feel her best self. With every breath, you can just see her moving that fluid in her mouth. And that's what's causing it to bubble up, I think, kind of just like shaking a soda bottle. There are those bubbles forming. You can hear her kind of like slurping it. I do feel like she's beginning to not feel as well. I'm gonna keep a close eye on her. She's not wanting to eat right now. Maybe she's just resting and digesting, but I feel like she's not as bright as she was. Again, maybe she's tired, right? But something else that I have just thought about that is different, or that has been a little different, is I have been increasing the amount of hay I've been feeding my horses because they've been wanting to eat more hay. I do think our grass is beginning to dry up a little. We've had a real hot week or two. So with asthma, sometimes it can be caused by, you know, moldy or dusty hay. It can be an environmental trigger sometimes. The hay looks good, it smells good. I shake it out to try to limit the amount of dust that is in it. But again, whenever my horses aren't feeling well, I try to first start by racking my brain about what is different, what has changed in their environment, in their experiences. And so with Sweetheart here, I can say that yes, they've all of the horses, including Sweetheart, have been eating significantly more hay over the last week or two, which has been when she's been having the most trouble with these flare-ups. So there could be a correlation there. It could just be coincidental. Shenanigans is wanting some attention here. But again, that's something I'll mention to the vet as a possibility. Now Snuggles is coming. But again, whenever your horses aren't feeling well, you want to be thinking about what is different, what has changed. So I do want to kind of make a note of that they have been eating a lot more hay, and perhaps I try to pull her off of the hay and see if that makes a difference. But then I have to kind of isolate her from everyone else. I mean, we still have grass, so I could just, I could just kind of go no hay for a couple of days and see if that helps to improve her situation. I'll have to keep thinking about it. Again, just look at her. She's kind of giving you that body language that says she's not feeling great. So I'll come back and check on her in about 30 minutes. And if I feel she's worse, I'll put a call in to the vet today. She had her medicine a good hour ago. So the fact that she's not perked up since then is a little concerning, a little surprising. When I came back down to the barn around 11 to check on Sweetheart, I went ahead and I just put all of the minis into the bottom field in the side paddock. And that way, none of them are in the stalls eating the hay today. It's a beautiful day. It's only in the 70s. They do want to go inside. They're all coming over because they do want to go into the barn. It's early afternoon. I did come down to check on her about an hour and a half ago, and she seemed to be much more comfortable having been out in the field on the grass and not in the stall. So I think the fresh air and perhaps being off of the hay has been very helpful. But let me get a little closer and see what she looks like. Yeah, as we watch her graze here, I'm not hearing all that extra fluid that she had earlier in the stall, which is good. You know, if there's less of that fluid building up, that kind of leads me to believe that there is perhaps a little less inflammation. You can still hear her, you know, she's a little wheezy still, but she seems to be feeling better. And I'm glad that she doesn't still have all of that extra fluid and frothy, foamy stuff. So again, I think we're doing well for the afternoon hours right now. We'll keep monitoring her. I will continue to keep all of our minis out here in these two little paddocks for the rest of the afternoon and perhaps even into the overnight. And for Sweetheart, I think that this is just the best thing for her right now, is to not be in the barn with the hay. So we'll keep this up and I'll keep you posted. Good morning, welcome. Today is day 3 of kind of this next wave of flare-ups for Sweetheart. I think I told you yesterday that I ended up putting the horses, you know, in the fields. I was limiting their stall access. And after being out in the field entirely for multiple hours, Sweetheart did seem to be faring better. I didn't see all that extra, you know, saliva and mucusy bubbles and all those things, right? And so I thought that was a good sign. Now, I did notice, though, that as we headed towards the evening hours, the horses really wanted to come back into the barn because that has been their routine. And so I kept kind of hemming and hawing about, well, do I just keep them turned out? Do I give them access to the stalls? And so what I landed on yesterday evening was coming down and cleaning the stalls really well. And I went ahead and I tried to remove all of that extra hay, you know, the uneaten hay that I've been using for bedding, because I began to wonder if maybe that increased hay for bedding hasn't maybe been increasing the amount of dust or allergens that are in the stalls. And so that was one thing I did last night. When I came down early this morning, I did notice that Sweetheart had a few bubbles hanging from her lower lips. She does not currently. She just came in after grazing out in the field. And again, there were no more signs of those bubbles, but I do know that overnight she was producing a little more of that fluid and saliva. And I also think that that could have been because they had been hanging out in the stalls overnight. I'm letting my other 3 minis into the feedlots now that Sweetheart has finished her breakfast, because they really, really do want to eat hay. You know, they've really enjoyed having hay these last few weeks. They've been eating it quite well. And so this is the hay that I pulled out of the stalls yesterday. And I've just put it in here so that Sweetheart would not have access to it. I have plenty of grass out in the field for them to eat, but these 3 I'm gonna let sit here and munch for a while, and Sweetheart can hang close by, and once I see they're kind of finished, I'll turn them back out for grazing. So as you can see, I'm really torn, and I'm kind of struggling between striking the balance, you know, meeting the needs of these 3, and then meeting the needs of Sweetheart, who is, you know, having another flare up. So I really have to first make sure that she is not any worse off, right? And then I also need to make sure that these 3 are getting what they need as well. So I think that Sweetheart will be okay right now. She's probably gonna hang close to the feedlots while these 3, you know, just eat on their hay for a bit. But I wanna go show you the stalls and talk a little more about what I've done in there. Here you can see Sweetheart. You know, she's gonna remain close to her buddies. She might come and follow me into the stalls, but again, keeping her out of the stalls, I do think is going to be in her best interest. That's just a little easier said than done, you know. But right now she seems to be pretty comfortable this morning. I can still hear a little bit of that extra fluid in her mouth and throat, but it's not so excessive that she's got the bubbles coming out. If you look here, the stalls are pretty sparse. I raked up all of that loose hay that I had shaken into the corners, and I tried to remove as much of the leftover hay bedding as I could, leaving just a little bit of shaving behind. I do need to run to the store today and get new bedding, and I'll be looking for as low a dust bedding as I can find. By the looks of the piles, though, the horses have spent a fair amount of time in the stalls. This is our second stall. And here, though, this looks to me to be like a giant drool puddle where Sweetheart was perhaps standing. The bubbles are what make me think it was from her saliva and not where someone went to the bathroom. So I do think the stall is perhaps a trigger. It's not the entire issue, but cleaning out my stalls as best I can and trying to get them as dust-free as possible, and then limiting the horses' time in here, I think will be imperative. All of that being said, this is absolutely where the horses want to be. They want to be in the stalls. They want to have hay. They want to have their hay in their stalls. And so it's almost as if I have to kind of reset and recondition all of us, myself included, as well as the horses, for this new era, I guess. You know, Sweetheart definitely seems to be feeling better and breathing better when she's out of the stalls. And that's what any of the forums or articles are saying about asthma or other airway issues. Of course, you know, if your horse can be out 24/7, that's most ideal. If you have a horse that is really sensitive, switching them from hay, of course you don't want a round bale, but even if you're feeding square bale, you might even need to switch them from a square bale hay to like a pre-purchased chopped hay, or even taking it a step farther would be a pelleted hay. So those are all things that I might need to consider for Sweetheart. I'm hoping though that really limiting her time in the stalls and keeping her outdoors in the open air as much as possible will be enough to really stabilize her situation and help keep her comfortable. So we'll see. Again, this is day 3 I would say she's a little better today. She was a little better yesterday than Saturday. Saturday, of course, was the worst of the three, the first of 3 days. So, she had her medicine again this morning. I don't think the medicine, though, is quite working as well as it initially did earlier in the summer. But is that because she's had greater access to hay and the extra hay bedding? It's hard to say because everything has been different, It's not just, I don't know. I've got so many questions. I am fortunate here on the farm. I have access to 3 different paddocks that we could use for this, more permanent 24/7 turnout. 2 of the paddocks have access to some sort of shelter. One of my paddocks does not, though, so I have to be mindful of that. But it does tie into a paddock that does have shelter, so that is good. So one of the shelters I have are, of course, the stalls in the front, right? And those I'm beginning to want to limit, I think. My other shelter, though, is this run-in in the back. And this is off the back of our barn, and it provides shelter for the back field as well as our new side paddock that has a gate that goes in between. So I could use these 2 back paddocks and still have access to this run-in shelter. It's nice, it's oversized, it's open air, it just has those closed 3 sides, but it gets plenty of good air. So this could be something, but you'll see. What do I have for bedding? I have old hay for bedding here, and that's because the ground gets really mucky. This is kind of something on the to-do list, is to work on the drainage. But if we do end up keeping the horses out of the stalls and then kind of utilizing this more, I probably should pull all of this hay out of here and work towards getting more the bluestone crush run, for the footing. And that way it's not the hay. If the hay is the culprit or one of the primary culprits here, I would want to limit that everywhere, right? So again, I just have so many questions, and I really am beginning to search for a vet who specializes in horses with asthma and other breathing conditions. I do love my vet. I think she's fantastic. But I think what we're dealing with here with Sweetheart is it's just different. It seems like it's more than just your average, slightly heavy horse. And I have so many questions that I need to find someone that I can really use as a soundboard and that I feel is really wanting to work with me when it comes to just the environmental piece and the dietary piece and the supplemental piece. And of course there are other medications and all too, but I'm really beginning to put feelers out to see if my friends don't know of somebody who really specializes in these airway issues. I've also just closed our bottom gate, and that way the horses will not have access to the stalls today. That'll give me time to get them cleaned out even more so and to get fresh bedding in there. So again, I'm gonna really try to keep Sweetheart out in the open air just as much as I possibly can. And then once the boys are finished eating here in a bit, I will just turn them out. But I do wanna keep her out of the stalls today. If you would like to continue to follow this flare-up, please be on the lookout for parts 2, 3, and 4 as we navigate this time. We do want to share this journey and hopefully find some relief for this sweet little mare.